Let's talk about the buzz that's stirring in Boston. And I'm not talking about another parade through Causeway. I'm talking about Jaylen Brown and a little quote that's now turning into a storm cloud over the Celtics offseason. Look, Celtics fans have had their share of drama, heartbreak, and speculation over the years. But this one's hitting a little different because it's not coming from the outside. It's coming from one of their own. JB went on a show and casually dropped a few words that might not sound like much to the average fan. But to anyone who's followed this team closely, it felt like the kind of comment you hear before a breakup. He mentioned his grandma talking to him about coming home, meaning Atlanta, and then said, "You never know." You never know? Man, that's the line you give when you're not ready to commit. That's the line people use when they're planting seeds for something down the road. And while Jaylen's still under contract with the Celtics, this quote just cracked open the door to every wild trade theory and what-if scenario. This is Boston. People don't just hear that and let it slide. That quote is going to live in headlines, on podcasts, and in group chats all season long, especially if the Celtics hit a rough patch. And honestly, it sucks, because Jaylen Brown has always been that guy who's had to prove himself, fight for respect, play through the noise. And now, here, he is adding more noise to his own situation. And let's not pretend like this is happening in a vacuum. Over in Atlanta, there's a whole different story unfolding. The Hawks are on edge. Their front office is still unsure if Trae Young is the long-term guy. He's extension eligible, hasn't signed yet, and after a few playoff runs that didn't really move the needle, the franchise is sitting at a crossroads. They've got pieces, they've got talent. Porzingis now in the mix, Jalen Johnson turning heads, and even some sleeper role players like Dyson Daniels and Luke Kennard. The roster's been reshaped and retooled, but they still don't know if Trae is the answer. So imagine the season plays out like this. Jaylen Brown balls out, averaging around 27 points a night, takes over games, loves being the number one option, and starts to feel what it's like to be the undisputed leader. No Tatum, no one else in the way, just him and the ball in his hands. And at the same time, Trae Young and the Hawks underwhelm. Maybe they sneak into the play-in. Maybe they flame out early. The front office starts having serious doubts. And now you've got one team thinking about the future and another player realizing he might actually enjoy being the face of a franchise. That's when things get dicey. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but Jaylen's under contract, this is all just fantasy talk, let me walk you through the real possibility of a sign-and trade. Let's say Atlanta comes in with an offer. Let's say the Celtics, sensing they might lose Brown eventually, decide to get ahead of it and engage in some negotiations. Maybe they work out a sign-and trade, Jaylen for Trae, straight up or with some small adjustments. Suddenly, it's not just a wild Reddit thread. It's a legitimate front office conversation. Would the Celtics entertain that kind of move? Look, from a financial standpoint, it might even make sense. Brown's deal is massive. We're talking over $230 million for 4 years. Trae's at a slightly smaller number, and if Boston wanted to reshape the roster while holding on to Tatum, a player like Trae could technically fit in better alongside him. He's a pure point guard, an elite passer, a guy who could open things up offensively in ways Boston hasn't seen in years. But just because it might make sense on paper doesn't mean it's the right move. Because there's a human side to this too. Jaylen has been through it with Boston. He's grown up in this city. He's taken the hits from the media, fought through the should they break up Tatum and Brown narrative every season, and kept showing up. He's not perfect, we've seen that, but he's loyal. He's gritty. He's the kind of player you want on a war for your team. So when he makes comments like this, it stings a little more. And to be fair, maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just having fun on a podcast, saying what people say when they're asked about their hometown. It could have been totally innocent. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. Those words are out there now. And in a league that thrives on speculation, every sentence turns into a storyline. Especially in a place like Boston, where expectations are always championship or bust. If the team gets off to a slow start, if chemistry looks off, if anything short of dominance happens, people will start pulling on that thread. And you better believe they'll be watching Jaylen's body language, every post-game quote, every interaction on the bench. Let's also talk about what this means for Trae Young, because he's not exactly drama-free himself. The guy has had issues with coaches, teammates, and overall leadership perception. He's clearly talented. He can drop 30 and 15 on any given night. But the question has never been about his ceiling. It's been about his ability to lead, to fit within a system, and to elevate the players around him. That's not a small thing. And if Boston's front office ever seriously considered swapping JB for Trey, they have to be absolutely sure that Trey's not just a numbers guy, but a winning guy. And while we're being honest, look, I don't love this conversation. I don't want to be talking about Jaylen Brown potentially walking. I don't want to be looking at trade machine scenarios. I want to be celebrating JB and what he brings to this team. I want to believe that he's locked in and ready to go chase another title with Tatum, White, Porzingis, and the rest of the squad. But I also know how this league works. Sometimes things shift before you even realize they're shifting. And if Jaylen Brown starts to feel like the grass might be greener somewhere else, especially somewhere that feels like home, well, that's something Boston has to be ready for. Because let's not forget, the last time we saw Jaylen Brown on the floor in a big moment, he was battling. He was putting his head down, taking the contact, going at the rim with everything he had. He's been the emotional engine for this team at times. And even if he's not as polished as Tatum, even if he's not as media savvy, he's a vital part of what the Celtics have built. So yeah, I get why fans are nervous. I get why this comment hit like a punch in the gut. And while it might not mean anything now, it's going to hang in the background all season. And that's why this next year is so important. Not just for Jaylen Brown, but for the entire organization. Because if the Celtics come out flat, if the chemistry isn't there, if the wins don't pile up, it's going to be open season on the narrative machine. Should they break it up? Is Tatum holding Jaylen back? Would Jaylen thrive more in a different system? We've heard it before, but this time it feels like there's more fuel for the fire. And if JB doesn't come out and publicly shut it down, if he doesn't say, "I'm here for good," or "Boston's where I want to be," then fair or not, the speculation is going to keep growing. And just when you thought the Celtics had enough to focus on with the Jaylen Brown chatter, the NBA dropped a rule change that might seem minor to the casual fan, but actually says a lot about where the league is headed. We're talking about the new policy on last-second heaves, those half-court or full-court prayers that players rarely attempt as the buzzer sounds because they don't want to mess with their field goal percentage. If you've ever wondered why a guy grabs a rebound with a couple seconds left and just dribbles out the clock instead of launching it, now you know. Players are protecting their stats, and the league finally admitted it by stepping in to say, okay, fine, we'll stop counting those as field goal attempts. On the surface, this sounds logical. If a guy throws up a 70-foot shot at the buzzer, it's not exactly representative of his shooting skill. But underneath that, it's kind of embarrassing that it even had to come to this. The NBA had to create a rule to get players to actually try to score at the end of quarter. Think about that. These are supposed to be the most competitive athletes in the world, and we had stars actively choosing not to shoot because it might shave a couple decimal points off their averages. I get it, incentives matter, and contracts are tied to numbers, but man, that's weak. And that's why it's so refreshing when you look at a guy like Peyton Pritchard. PP doesn't care. He grabs the ball with 1 second left, he's chucking it. And not just chucking it, he's hit a few of them too. That's what you want to see from your role players. That kind of mentality. And you know who else deserves some love here? Nikola Jokic. The Joker has made a living off of not giving a damn about what the box score says. We've seen him casually toss up full-court one-handers, no hesitation. That's what playing to win looks like. It's not about protecting your percentages. It's about trying to squeeze out every point you can, even if it's 1 in 100. But for every Jokic or Pritchard, there's a handful of stars who just dribble the clock out with that sheepish, I didn't see it look. Kevin Durant even addressed it online, admitting he avoids those shots for that very reason. And KD's not alone. This is widespread. The league had to make a rule just to get guys to do the thing they should have been doing all along. So yeah, the change is good, but it also exposes just how much the modern NBA has become a game of perception and analytics. It's not just about wins anymore. It's about efficiency ratings, shooting splits, and narrative control. And the league is fully leaning into that image. Which brings us to Adam Silver. The commissioner stepped in front of the mic this week during the Board of Governors meetings and gave us a glimpse of how the NBA sees itself in 2025, and man, it was a little depressing. When asked about the rising cost of watching basketball, and we're not talking ticket prices here, we're talking about how fans need to subscribe to 5, sometimes 6 different platforms just to watch all the nationally televised games, Silver didn't address the issue with concern or empathy. Instead, he brushed it off by saying something like, well, the NBA is more of a highlight league now. A lot of people follow the sport without watching full games. Are you kidding me? That's the answer? A fan expresses frustration that they need ESPN, TNT, ABC, Amazon Prime, and now Peacock just to follow their team, and the response from the league's top executive is basically, just watch the highlights. That's not just tone deaf, that's dangerous for the product. The NBA has become a league that's prioritizing viral moments over actual games. And when the commissioner himself says it out loud, it confirms a lot of the fears that longtime fans have had. That the league cares more about engagement metrics and social media clips than about cultivating a real connection between fans and teams. And the thing is, highlights are great. They're part of the culture now. Everyone's got Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. But if you only ever see 10-second clips, you're missing the context, the grind, the storylines that make basketball matter. You miss the off-ball defense, the hustle plays, the chess matches between coaches. You miss the soul of the game. And the fact that the league seems totally okay with fans missing that, just so they can keep stacking streaming deals, that says a lot. The NBA is not just pushing the envelope. They're tearing it up and replacing it with a subscription wall. Now look, the business of sports has always been messy, and fans know it's a business. But when you've got players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on track to make over $1 million per game in a few years, and the fans who help fuel those paydays are being told to just check the highlights because full games are too complicated to access, that creates a disconnect. You're asking fans to stay loyal while also making it harder and more expensive to stay engaged. That doesn't sit right. And this all ties back into the Jaylen Brown situation, too. Because you better believe that comments like, "You never know," from JB become fuel for social media algorithms. It's the kind of clip that gets 1 million views, 100 reaction videos, and suddenly becomes its own narrative, divorced from the game itself. That's the NBA world we're living in now, where a guy says 6 words and it dominates the news cycle more than his actual performance. Because that's what the league wants, clips, not context. Meanwhile, back to the Celtics. While Jaylen's quote might be causing ripples, there's still real basketball to be played. The team is gearing up for a season that's going to test their depth, their chemistry, and their ability to stay locked in despite all the noise. And part of that is going to come down to guys like Derek White, who might quietly be one of the most valuable pieces on this team. But here's the twist. His name is already starting to show up in trade conversations, not because he's underperforming, but because his value might be peaking. That's the problem with having a great roster in a salary cap league. Eventually, you start looking at numbers. And when you see a 32-year-old guard with a rising salary, you start wondering, can we move this piece now before it declines? That's the cold calculus front offices are making. And as much as fans love Derek White, and rightfully so, the business side doesn't always care about sentiment. It cares about value, return, and future flexibility. So don't be shocked if those whispers get louder, especially if Boston is struggling early. But again, this is why the league feels a little off lately. Because instead of celebrating guys like White or diving into how players like Peyton Pritchard impact winning, the conversation shifts to contracts, trade value, and who might be the next guy out the door. It becomes less about basketball and more about the transactional drama. And maybe that's just the reality now. Maybe fans are more into the GM mode of it all. But you can't help but feel like something's being lost in the process. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give a video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The NBA world is buzzing with whispers of a blockbuster young talent potentially heading to Boston, and all eyes are turning toward one name, Bronny James. Sources close to the league suggest that the Celtics are quietly making moves to secure the highly touted prospect, whose blend of athleticism, basketball IQ, and marketable persona could redefine the team's future. While nothing is official yet, the mere possibility has ignited social media, fan forums, and even casual observers into a frenzy. Boston, long known for its storied basketball legacy, appears to be positioning itself as the ultimate landing spot for a player with both on-court versatility and off-court star power. The appeal is clear. BRONNY embodies the new generation of two-way talent. Defensively, he shows instincts and effort reminiscent of seasoned veterans, while offensively, his court vision and skill set make him a matchup nightmare. Combine that with a family name that transcends sports, and you have a perfect storm for hype, merchandise sales, and national attention. Front office insiders are reportedly excited about more than just basketball. The Celtics marketing team is said to be buzzing behind the scenes, envisioning campaigns that could leverage BRONNY's global recognition, social media presence, and appeal to younger fans. If these rumors materialize, Boston wouldn't just be gaining a promising player. They'd be acquiring a cultural phenomenon capable of energizing a franchise hungry for a new era. Skeptics caution that draft night maneuvering and player decisions remain unpredictable, but the chatter surrounding this potential Celtics-BRONNY connection refuses to die down. Analysts are already debating how he would fit alongside Boston's current core, imagining lineups where his two-way prowess could complement the team's strategic ambitions. Beyond wins and losses, the narrative of legacy, hype, and future branding seems almost tailor-made for a city that thrives on basketball stories. For now, fans are left to speculate and dream, sharing highlights, mock lineups, and bold predictions. Whether this rumor ends in a signed contract or remains just that, a tantalizing whisper, the notion of Bronny James in green and white is enough to set the NBA world ablaze, reminding everyone that sometimes the buzz itself is the story. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.